Welcome to Decoding Parenthood, where we unleash the secrets of parenting. As we roll into the year 2023, we're all looking to bring in some healthy eating habits, not only to our palate, but also our child's palate. Today, we have Miss Jenny with us, who's also a licensed nutritionist, and we're going to talk about how we can introduce foods to our child's palate without throwing them off, having a continuous balance, and also maybe introduce new palettes to our own diet. So, welcome, Miss Jenny.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Happy New Year.
Oh, same to you. So, what do you think? How can, as a parent, as a working parent, how can we start introducing new foods to our child's diet? Many families might relate to this, and their child might just want chicken nuggets and pizza for every dinner. And as we work 8, 9 hours a day, we don't want to deal with the drama and the hunger. So, maybe we can talk about different ways today on how we can give these choices to children, but still not shock their system.
Yeah, I think introducing different foods to kids is very important, and it doesn't have to be stressful, doesn't have to be traumatic, and it also doesn't need to be immediate. And I think the last aspect of it, not being immediate, is the point that parents definitely need to pay attention to, because a lot of the clients that I work with expect results very quickly and feel a lot of frustration over not succeeding within very short periods of time. But ultimately, the way we eat is a skill that is a lifelong skill, and we continue learning it. And
Okay.
we continue changing our likes and dislikes, our preferences, our palate changes
Mhm.
to, depending on what we exposed to, uh, you know, things that are of interest to us. So utilizing our entire universe essentially is a great way to introduce new things into your child's life, just like you would with anything that's not edible as well. So involving a child is definitely one of those options. Uh, you can take your child shopping with you. You can create a game or a plan or a tradition of getting a new fruit or a new vegetable or a new food of some other type
Mhm.
that you would get every week and
Mhm.
try. Um, and you can, again, depending on the age of the child, you can look up at how to prepare it or how to cut it up if it's just a
Mhm.
fruit, etc. There are lots of different options out in the websites,
Mhm.
out on YouTube. So once you kind of make that step of, hey, let's explore and experiment,
Mhm.
the sky is really the limit. And there are definitely resources that are widely
Right.
available and available for
Yeah.
free. Involving the child is very, very important.
Mhm.
Also, leveraging child's interest in this aspect is
Mhm.
also very helpful. So, for example, if the child is interested and loves art, maybe you can get like a dragon fruit and draw it before you cut it up and eat it.
Okay.
Or maybe you make it out of clay. Or maybe, with a younger child, you look at the different colors of the fruit and then you cut it up
Mhm.
and you look at the colors on the inside.
Mhm.
If you have a child who is interested in math, they can
Mhm.
count up all the seeds of the dragon fruit. So there are lots of ways to kind of build this almost like as an educational activity
Mhm.
that is just a part of your lifestyle for all the kids. Learning about where does this fruit come from? Does it grow on a tree? Does it grow on the bush?
Mhm.
Like all of those things are also going to be very important.
Mm.
And the involvement of child's interest and involving the child and kind of allowing child-led directive
Mhm.
to take place will also help with children being more open and less stressed about trying new foods. So what I invite you to, do with kids is actually, be mindful of, what are the types of foods that I eat and how can I make this more fun and at the same time more varied. Starting with familiar things and expanding out within that familiar category is actually one of the ways to make that process less stressful for a child if new things are stressful. So, for example, if the child is enjoying cauliflower, then you take that food and you go to the store and you look at that. We have green cauliflower, we have purple cauliflower, we have orange cauliflower, or we have this type of apple and that type of apple. And then you can, for example, with dinner for dessert, you can buy one of each apple, cut it up in slices,
Compare.
and do like a tasting party, which, elevates the experience, involves the entire family, and makes it a lot more fun. And speaking of families, family style dining is also one of the ways to encourage, introduce, and also desensitize the child to that shock of something that's new. When the child is exposed to various foods, that becomes the norm for the child. So with that, the child will be more likely to be open to trying new things and also to recognize that we just eat food. There is no, this is child's food and this is adult's food, and they don't mix. So again, accepting food for what it is, as opposed to seeking specific, boxes for that food to be called, kids foods, non-kids foods, is important. And we see that, cross-culturally, where, if we go to, most fast food places in the US, for example, you're going to see kids menu. If you go to a variety of ethnic restaurants, be it Mexican, Vietnamese, Korean, there is no such thing as a kids menu. The children will eat
What adults eat.
what adults eat.
Yeah.
And usually, the kids are just going to pick at whatever everybody's eating instead of like having to order a plate for themselves. And I think it's a very important skill for children to learn that a negative experience is still an experience and it's still valuable. And it is okay to try something and to not like it. In general. At least 10, if not 30 times is necessary to continue tasting something in order for your taste buds to kind of accept that flavor and for one person to not necessarily love the new food, but at least not be absolutely,
push back from it.
Yeah. So saying to a child, it's okay, and then trying that some at a later time is, I think, a viable option as well.
I also, would like to add to that is that, when we give something to our child, and if they try it, and it could be like, just a teaspoon, you have to appreciate that part and, thank them for trying it out because they were hesitant. They took that step. And we as adults are very vocal and can express how we feel. And if we don't like something, we're not going to eat it. But they're always worrying about, what if my mom and dad get sad or what if they get angry. So it's very important that when they do, you have to appreciate like, oh, thank you for trying. I know you didn't like it, but I really, appreciate, or I'm thankful that you actually took that step towards trying something new, because then the next time they won't be scared to try something new because they know that, it's okay. It's okay to not like something.
And they're probably going to learn that it's okay
To be and more
to
comfortable.
be honest
Yeah. Yep.
with your parents.
Yep.
One thing that you mentioned that I wanted to kind of loop into this conversation is you said that as adults, we may know that we don't like something and we just don't eat it.
Mhm.
So interestingly enough, our palates don't always match our children's palates. So as adults, I encourage, families to purchase in small amounts things that they may not necessarily like because their children may like it. And just to give you a personal example, for the longest time, I absolutely could not stand the taste and the smell of celery. Like, absolutely just repulsed by it. So we have never ever had celery in the house. And my son went to his friend's house and they had celery and he ate celery. And I was so shocked because, you think I'm a nutritionist, I'm a specialist, I've worked with so many people for so many years. And it hasn't even crossed my mind
Yeah.
that maybe I should get some celery because what if my child likes celery? We can learn from our kids and also emphasize the experience, not necessarily based on our personal one, but just letting them experience this world without our opinions already ingrained there.
No, I mean, that's an amazing point because, we come from a different culture and a different background.
Yeah.
All of us do at some point. And we always try and, we always see our children's eating habits and we're like, we grew up eating this. Why are you not eating? But we forget that, we all adults have different taste buds. We all like different things. Even, husband, wife, they have different choices. And how can you expect a child to like everything you like because they also have their own personal choice? So, as we were talking about this and earlier, you brought up a great point about family style dining.
So, family style dining is essentially the old traditional family meal.
Okay.
And that doesn't have to be dinner, it can be every meal. I mean, ideally, it would be every meal, but it doesn't have to be. And it can be a breakfast, it can be lunch, it can be dinner, it could be a snack, it doesn't matter. So, the basis of the family style meal is that everybody sits down at a table together and food is served not individually on a plate, but food is served, in the middle of the table and people take what they wish. So, in general, family style dining usually will expose all the participants, child including, to the variety of foods that's being served. And by knowing what people like, and also verbalizing the intentions, people can establish a very healthy routine of, having different meals and recognizing that sometimes there will be food that not everybody loves, but we are grateful for the person who made it. We're grateful for having the funds to put food on our table, and we're just going to eat it. And on another day, there will be something else that, somebody else will really, really like, and maybe somebody else may or may not like.
I have heard from parents like, when their child or their children are in school, they seem to be eating what school provides. So it could be different cuisine or, it could be a different kind of pasta. Like they apparently are like the best eaters when it comes to trying different things at an outside venue or an outside place. But then when they cook the same thing at home, they don't want to try any of it. So they always question, it's like, what are we doing so differently? Or like, what is as a parent, like, what can I do that they can continue to try new things even at home as they're doing it at their work of, schooling or wherever they are? Um, do you have any pointers on that?
First of all, not every school has such an amazing, food program as you. And most schools will actually serve, fast food uh, for their children. And fast food or processed food is a hyper palatable food. What that means is that those foods will have a lot of sugar, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of fat, and a lot of salt
Mm-hmm.
by default. And specifically, the food is designed to have those combinations of these, ingredients to make sure that the food will taste good
Mm-hmm.
and that a person will want more of it. So we really cannot be in the same competition
Mhm.
with real homemade foods and fast processed foods. It's just not the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same chemically. They don't affect our brain in the same way. So for, children that are, set to eat really well at school, you're going to start wondering what exactly they're
That
eating,
eating, right.
rather than start doubting yourself and your culinary skills.
Mm.
Or, if the fast food is really not a piece of that puzzle at all,
Mm-hmm.
we have to remember the psychology of children and, the excitement of novice things and the fact that a lot of children will eat at somebody else's house and they won't eat at your house.
Right.
To a point where there are parents that will literally cook the food, bring it to the neighbor, take the kid to the neighbor, have the neighbor pretend they cooked the food and feed the child, and the child will eat it.
Yeah.
So, like I said, one of the things that is attractive about children is how amazing their world is and how unpredictable they are.
Mm-hmm.
If there is an option to send them to school with food that has been homemade,
Mm-hmm.
obviously that would be a better choice.
Mm-hmm.
If that is not an option, then, figuring out rules at home and kind of sticking to them and figuring out, okay, how are we going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
I know one of the tricks that has been very successful in my practice is to have veggie trays sitting out with and fruit bowls and just not letting kids, like if you want snack, this is snack. We don't have any snacks. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't buy snacks, you don't have it in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And if the child is hungry, they're going to munch on it. If they're not hungry and it's just, rubbing their eyes, they're probably going to reach for it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So at the very least, you know that in addition to whatever the processed food that they have received at school, they will get some
Nutrition.
nutrient-rich
Yeah.
foods
At the end of the
in the
sentence.
form of various fruits and veggies.
Mm.
And again, you never know what mood your child is in at any particular day and time
Yeah.
and moment.
Yeah.
So my suggestion is to keep it interesting, keep those trays, varied. Obviously, if you see a pattern where, your kid is obviously preferring red peppers to green peppers, get more red peppers.
Mm-hmm.
But also, another suggestion is to kind of keep a rotation of different foods so that you can figure out maybe they're going to like something that
Right.
you haven't expected them to like.
As we're talking about how children like certain foods and they tend to gravitate towards those, such as, it could be the chicken nuggets, or unfortunately, it could be soda, or, high fructose drinks. How can we, still provide those? Because, we don't want them to not eat,
Mhm.
but then also make sure that, they're not consuming a lot of sugar, a lot of fat. How can we make sure that it's still, you know, they're not starving, but then they're also not just tend to eat that all the time.
Right. Great question. I think first and foremost, we have to keep things in perspective.
Mhm.
and institute small baby steps that can be sustainable rather than trying to reach an unattainable goal. So, maybe start with just getting a better product first, better quality, and then starting to train the palate to be accepting to less sugar, less salt, etc. So your example with the soda, if the child is drinking soda, there are ways to make your own soda. Like, for example, you can buy ginger ale with like 45 grams of sugar, artificial sweeteners, or artificial colors, high fructose corn syrup, etc. So all the ingredients that you may not necessarily want in your child's diet. If you just take seltzer and you take honey and you take some fresh ginger and you grate it, or you boiled some ginger and you mix it with the seltzer, depending on how fizzy your child likes their drink, and mix the honey in, you're going to get a sweet gingery drink, which is going to be a replacement to the ginger ale. Um, and what I would suggest is actually, again, involving the child and get it as sweet as they need it. So that at first, your first step that can be sustainable is for them to enjoy the replacement. Once you are set with that replacement, then slowly but surely you can maybe add a little bit less of the honey. And next time you make it, you add just a little tiny bit less. And I'm talking, maybe a quarter teaspoon less or a half a teaspoon less. So it's a very gradual, slow change, but that will allow the taste buds to adjust, redevelop, and for your child not necessarily have that very overt negative response to the changes. Same thing with, your example with chicken nuggets. Get good quality organic chicken. Make the breading. Buy good quality oil and do deep fried chicken nuggets in the oil. But you know what every single
Kind of oil
ingredient
you
is.
used.
Yes. So that way you are finding that compromise between your child that has very restricted eating patterns and at the same time really taking small steps to improve the quality of their intake and also getting them involved in the food prep and showing that food comes from making it versus from the
Buying
box.
it. Buying it.
Another way to enhance nutrient quality of foods for children with very limited palates is to actually mix things in and hide them in. So, for example, they're, let's say they love mac and cheese, and we just talked about a box, right? There are cauliflower-based mac and cheeses. You can try that. If they like spaghetti and meatballs, for example, you can start with putting a little bit of vegetables in the ground meat for the meatballs. And slowly again dilute the meat with the veggies, so they're still getting the flavor, the texture, but they're also getting the veggies.
I couldn't agree less. It's so important, as you mentioned, like you're not alone and it's not a personal attack. So, yes, we all work and we want to create this, nutritious, healthy meal for our child. And if they don't eat, we take it personally because we are like, oh,
because we put our heart and soul
we
into
put our heart
it.
and soul. But the child doesn't, they care that you put your heart and soul in. But when we go somewhere or when you go to a restaurant and there's a dish that you ordered and if you don't like it, you don't want to eat it. So how is that okay? And it's not okay for them to dislike what you made, right? So, let's take these points. Let's create an amazing palette for our children. But, don't give up because there's always going to be a learning point at every single thing that you try. And this is just one of them. So thank you, Miss Jenny, for telling us so many, insights about how to increase your child's palate, how you can involve them in cooking, how you can involve them in meal planning, right? They're just children for us, but they are also equally responsible, and they like responsibility. So let's involve them and let's make, them a part of the change that you want to bring. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you having here.
My pleasure. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
having me.
Of course. Thank you. Until next time.